Hi guys, welcome to another review, and just in time for Sad Girl September, we're reviewing Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Mellors. Now, before I get started, I wanted to show you guys my newest camera. It's the DJI Pocket 2 Creator Combo. I'm so excited to start filming using this. I think it has better noise reduction than my ZV-1, and it will also give me more steady clips to work with whenever I travel. I do have some trips planned, so hopefully I won't give you guys a migraine whenever you watch my travel videos. So yes, I invested that for that sole reason. So watch out, she's gonna be in her travel vlogger era soon. But as I said before, books are always gonna be at the heart of this channel, so let's get on to the book review. Now, there's always that one book that polarizes the entire book community, and for 2023, I think it's safe to say that it is Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Mellors. On one of the end of the spectrum, we have a bunch of people, most likely millennials, loving and relating to this book and the characters. And on the other hand, we have another bunch of people, most likely millennials, who are absolutely hating on this book and absolutely loathe this book. Okay, so for me, I'd have to put myself somewhere in the middle. I mean, yes, this book is littered with first world problems and pretentious millennials who like to use New York as their entire personality. But at the same time, I didn't have much of a problem finishing this book. So I think that's a good sign. Let's talk a little bit about the author, Coco Mellors. So this is Coco Mellors' first book. I mean, this is actually her first published novel, and lo and behold, it instantly became a hit and was one of the most buzzed about books in 2022. I first heard about it back in 2022 actually, and added it to my TBR list back then, but then I wasn't able to secure a copy because it was so expensive to ship here. Now, I absolutely know that she put her heart and soul into getting this book published and finishing this novel. And it's even stated in the acknowledgements that this took around 7 years to write and get published. Like, the entire process took 7 years, which I think is great commitment and is really inspiring if you're an aspiring writer like myself. Am I the pretentious millennial? Now, the story centers around Cleo and Frank. Cleo is actually short for Cleopatra, and Frank is fortunately not short for Frankenstein. I'm so glad that the author didn't name the main character Frankenstein. I think it was just for style purposes. So the two have this very overwhelming meet cute in the elevator, and I think that the setting was during New Year's Day. Cleo happens to be a British student at the very end of her student visa, and Frank is some eccentric agency owner and is apparently quite rich. Now, you know I'm always honest. So first impressions, I did not like both of these characters. I instantly was turned off by the dialogue even. The moment you meet them, you kind of think that their dialogue read like a John Green novel that you wanted to leave back in 2012. But instantly, they take a liking towards each other. They tumble in the sheets during the first night because they're two consenting adults who happen to have the hots for each other in New York City. So 6 months later, right, Cleo and Frank get married. And it's here that you kind of realize that these two have nothing in common. What can go wrong, right? By the way, I'm not so sure if the mic is picking this up, but I'm not so sure if you guys can hear like a cult having a meeting. I'm so sorry about that. Please bear with me. So, as a reader, we discovered that Cleo is a 25-year-old with a whole sad artist trope going on. And Frank is this 44-year-old creep who had no business marrying a woman almost half his age. So we clearly get the gist that this is just a marriage of convenience. Cleo, she needs to stay in New York because her student visa is expiring, right? And frankly, pardon the pun, she has no place to stay anymore and she's quite broke. And as for Frank, he's just plainly a creep. I said that? What do you mean I already said that? Well, he's a creep who enjoys the arm candy and really likes Cleo because, and I quote this from the book, she's hot. Now, if there is one thing that really saves this book, is how the story managed to progress. We see what transpires between Cleo and Frank as the months passed, but sometimes it's through the eyes of people around them. I think this is really like good commentary on how the decisions we make impact the people around us. For example, Quentin, Cleo's friend, feels utterly alone and abandoned once she marries Frank. Frank's sister Zoe, on the other hand, can't seem to come to terms to the presence of Cleo in her life. Here is another woman who is just a few years older than her, mind you, suddenly married to her half-brother. So I really did like that. It's such a unique overview of relationship dynamics. When we go through a major change in our lives, like a relationship or something more that requires more commitment, like a marriage, it really upends people around us. And like in real life, these reactions, they do vary. Some people are totally fine with this major change and they're like genuinely happy for you. Others, they just feel like you no longer fit in their perception of you, so they lash out and pull away. And you know, all these emotions are totally natural and are totally valid. So that being said, we do get the perspective of like a bunch of other characters too. We get the point of view from Frank's friends mostly, which makes sense because I read in an interview with Coco Mellors that she found Frank's voice early on before really getting into like developing Cleo's character. Now, I think it's safe to say that Cleo and Frank's relationship was a big red flag from the get-go, and I didn't know that upon picking up the book, and I really wished I did read the blurb in detail. It's a red flag, and I'll even go as far as saying that it is a trigger warning for so many. Now, you know I'm talking about the age gap. I'm not a big fan of age gap relationships, especially in books. In fact, this is probably my first novel in a while where the couple has a very significant age gap. And I stray away from that because it tends to be a little bit personal for me. I was in a relationship with somebody in the past who was way older than me, around a decade older actually, and I was like in my very early 20s. And I just think like storylines like this can trigger a lot of people like myself. When you were in a relationship with someone significantly older, during the course of that relationship, you don't see the issues. But like when the relationship ends and you reach the age of the person that you were in a relationship with, you just look back and feel a little bit uncomfortable and honestly a little bit ick. Yes, Cleo was of legal age, but somebody in the age of 25 isn't the same type of adult as somebody at the age of 44, like Frank's age. So it doesn't matter how much redeeming qualities Coco Mellors tries to insert about Frank, how much she tries to actually humanize him. I don't think he was a good person at all. So I totally recommend that you stay away from this book if that type of storyline or that type of plot triggers you, because it really does seem like a recurring theme in this book. Like Cleo gets into a number of relationships with older or middle-aged men who take advantage of her, obviously, and there are just no reparations for these men in the end. Another trigger warning here is the whole cheating situation. I hate books that have cheating on it. So you get the picture, Cleo and Frank are not happy, so they go on to have affairs with other people, and it's sort of painted out like a romantic thing, like hey, Frank finally found his soulmate. But I think cheating is just, it's still cheating, you know. So I'm talking about this emotional relationship Frank develops with his co-worker, who I do not get why so many people like this woman when she full on pursued an emotional relationship with Frank even after finding out he was married. So Cleo naturally discovers this and goes on to like take her revenge and pursues a relationship with one of Frank's friends, who is also middle-aged, by the way. So they're really just the definition of toxic for each other, and like a ripple effect, it impacts the people around them. Now, there are so many other serious trigger warnings in this book. Like there are characters that attempt to end their life, illegal drug use, emotional abuse, and transphobia, to name a few. So please think about that before picking up this book, and if you do decide to read this, please do take care of yourself and get the support you need if it triggers you so much. Now let's talk about the writing of this book. I say the writing of this book is quite good. if you can get past the cringy first chapter, it just gets a little bit better than that. Now, I know there's still a lot of cringe, especially with Zoe's chapters, but you know that this is a book about insufferable people, so prepare yourself to want to hurl this book against the wall every once in a while. I did find the dialogue quite funny too, so expect that there's gonna be a lot of comedy in this book. I think, and this is just my guess, that the author is planning to turn this into some like HBO series like The Girls. Was it The Girls? The one with Lena Dunham. Anyway, I'm talking about like some HBO show about adults. It's very, you know, Cleopatra and Frankenstein is very dialogue driven. One character might say something very funny every once in a while, so I think those are very good breathers as the book goes to very dark places every now and then. And it seems quite cringe to say, but I am quite drawn to authors that create this very lonely atmosphere in books, and I think Coco Mellors does that very well here. It's very Sofia Coppola coded. It just perfectly encapsulates the loneliness of being an adult in a city that you don't recognize. I could almost feel this book, if that makes sense. Cleo's chapters really did give me a lot to think about. And I love that in the ending, we just see some of the relationships that Cleopatra and Frank have with their friends and family. You know, they never get fixed in the end. Because in reality, some relationships are just beyond mending. So you have no choice as an adult but to move on. And when you're like in your mid-20s to your 30s and above, you just never really notice, but you have cut so many ties with people who aren't, you know, willing to try and build a relationship with you. I really like how this book ended, and I really like that in the end we still realize that Frank is an ass. So in the end, I did give this book 3 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I'd say it is a bit overhyped and all over the place, but this was, you know, an okay book. If you can get past the awful characters, this is actually a pretty decent read. I'd shelve it as books that you can actually leave this earth without reading. And if you choose to read it, then it's gonna be an okay experience if you can also like handle all the trigger warnings. Okay, wow, this took a while to film. It's actually getting dark, so thank you so much if you managed to watch all the way to the end. If you haven't already, I'd love for you to subscribe, and if you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up. I'll see you on my next video. Bye!